All
Good to
right,
go.
perfect. So, hi, all. Hi, my name is Mike Brown. My pronouns are he and him, and I am the Senior Community Engagement Manager for Hilltop Children's Center and Educator Institute, a Reggio inspired preschool after school program and equity focused professional development. Um, Supporting educators like yourself, right? To reflect, to grow, to challenge, um, to get downright uncomfortable sometimes, right? Because that's what we need to do, especially if we're working with the next generation of leaders, the next generation of thinkers, movers, and shakers. So I'm excited to be here. Um, Teresa today is our moderator, but before I hand things over to her, I just really wanted to share my appreciations, my thoughts, and love for the tremendous work that both Theresa and Darline, who is our other co-presenter, just the work that they're doing. Without you two, we wouldn't be here today, and today would not have been made possible. This year has been super rough mentally, emotionally, physically, and despite all of that, all of the harm people have tried to do all the time, people have worked to kill your spirits. Um, you have risen, you have smiled, and you have fought through it. And it's that spirit, it's that attitude, it's that love that I really do hope to carry through my life, both personally and professionally, moving forward. And it's all of that I hope people leave this conference with at the end of these 7 days. That spirit, that attitude, that love to work for change, to work to dismantling a system that hasn't worked for all of us. Work for a more better, more gracious, more lovable future. And then specifically for you, Teresa, I I have asked a lot of you for your many gifts and for your time. And surprise, I'm here to ask one more thing of you. So on your desk, you will see a bundle of tobacco, and I offer you this bundle for the official opening remarks of the Learning Stories Conference 2021 to lead us through a smudging ceremony for a land acknowledgement and for your love and your guidance with this virtual gathering. And I would be honored if you were to accept this request on behalf of myself, of Hilltop, and of all the participants who will be gathering in this virtual space together. And you're on mute.
I'm on mute. I'm next to a 3-year-old classroom, so you may hear them having fun throughout the conference. There's a lot of movement going on in there. Thank you. Yes, I do accept your bundle of medicine. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and start. Introduce myself. My name is Theresa Alfonso Mendez. My pronouns are she, her. I'll be the moderator for today's workshop. I'm here to support you in any way I can. For those who are joining right now, please go into the chat room. There's a link there for signing in if you're wanting to receive credits. Just a reminder that you need to do that if you want credits. Also a reminder to use the chat to engage in public chat in respectful ways. While we may disagree and challenge one another, any of the comments that are discriminatory, incite fear, or intimidation may result in the removal of you from this workshop as well as possibly the conference. We also ask that we all keep ourselves on mute until specifically asked by the presenter to unmute yourself. There will be times during the conference where the presenters will stop so we can have some Q&As that will come out of the chat room. Those messages will be private to me, and I'll add them to the list. If you're having any tech issues, also privately message us, and we'll get to that and deal with that through the conference. Okay, so I am actually going to smudge with some sage that I have from home, which is the Crow Nation in Montana. And while we come from many different locations across North America, your host right now is Hilltop Children's Center and Educator Institute, and we're located on the traditional lands of the Duwamish people, the first people of what is known as Seattle now, Washington. It is of great gratitude and respect that Hilltop is able to be on these indigenous lands. The Duwamish people are an unrecognized tribe by the federal government, and they're still facing their own unjust in current times. We encourage that those are in the greater Seattle area join in the fight for their rights. If you are friends from elsewhere, we encourage you to learn more about the relationships with and support your local Indigenous tribes in your neighborhood. So I'm gonna light up. I'm using sage right now, and sage is used to cleanse the air, which I think is very important, especially opening up a conference of this kind of healing that's happening. Traditionally, we light the sage, and then we have the smoke, and you're welcome. I'll fan it to you guys. But traditionally, over my body and around me, and I'm gonna do the screen for everybody else. This is my first time doing this virtually, so I'm really honored to be allowed to do this. Thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna put my hands up to Creator. Amen. All right. Now it's my honor to introduce you to the workshop, and it's a moment in time, a reflection of organizational change. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Theresa. So today is just a conversation, right? I thought about creating a presentation. I thought about a workshop, and I'm like, why don't we just talk, right? Because what we do best is speak. We tell stories, right? As educators, as BIPOCs, right? This is what we inherently do. So, in order to, I mean, everyone can keep your video cameras off, right? I usually don't say that. Usually, it's very important for communities of color to see faces, to interact. But feel free to turn it off and just to listen. And you can also just spotlight us if you care to put a name to a face to wonder who's speaking. You can also do that. But I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad we have a chance to kick off this conference with our story. Learning stories are so often written for children, but I found it to be such a powerful tool for self-reflection for ourselves, as well as for an organization. So I've been here for a little over 4 years, and Darline, you've been here for nearly 2 years now, and we have both had similar experiences, unfortunately. And to keep it real, right, it hasn't been a great one for both of us. And I don't think there's any coincidence that in the last 50 years, Hilltop has only had 2 leaders of color, and both of them have the same story to tell. And that story is one full of racism, classism, sexism, and oppression. And I think that's a story that we're going to tell today, right? We'll tell through a reflection together. A story that I hope personally highlights and make concrete the different ways oppression can live in our field of ECE for educators, for program leaders, for white people, for BIPOCs. So I'm hoping you come to this workshop and this opening workshop with that frame of mind, right? Because people go, oh, well, that only happens in Texas. That only happens in Missouri. No, it can happen right here. So to get us started, to kind of lay the foundation for the rest of today's conversation, I'm just going to start off with 2 questions. First of all, I think we need to both just kind of express how we're entering this space together, because turn on the news, it's wild out here, and just how the last 2 and 4 years have been on us both, on our, really on our mental health. And Darline, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to speak first.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be in this space first off, and to be kicking off this Learning Stories conference by getting the opportunity to share our own story. I'm just extremely grateful for. If you ask, today I feel optimistic. I'm entering this space eager to learn. I'm ready to share. I'm humbled to even be heard. Oftentimes, as a person of color, you're not asked to have your voice heard. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. As a new ED, I never expected to spend my first year trying to thrive in the midst of a global pandemic. I started in Hilltop in November of 2019, just 4 months before King County had its first case of COVID-19. And I realize now that 4 months is definitely not enough time to make deposits in trust in relationships. And I see relationships as being something that you have to work towards in order to be able to have enough in your bank account, is how I like to call it, that when you need to make a withdrawal and have something kind of go not okay, that there's enough trust in there to keep that relationship going. And I realize now that 4 months was not enough time to have built enough trust in the relationship that I have to get the full support I needed to make some substantial decisions that cause a lot of organizational change for us, especially change that I don't think people were ready for. I was becoming a new leader in an organization that has had a long-standing reputation in early childhood education, and has that experience has been really intimidating for me, but also extremely thrilling. I was becoming the first leader of color in what was historically a white-led organization, like you mentioned, walking into a space that I didn't expect to turn out the way that it did. I found myself entering an environment where we were very intentional about being unique in this field. Our program and our pedagogy did not welcome children and families that had similar backgrounds or experiences to mine as a child. I know early on, there was lots of stories about having opportunities for children to experience the childhood that we all know and remember, and sitting here thinking, I don't want children to experience my childhood, and just wondering how am I going to survive in this when most of the children that we served were coming from a very safe place. And so, what is that going to mean for when we welcome children who have different backgrounds and experiences? I knew I had to be very intentional about decisions that I was making, and I knew that it was going to be hard to dismantle the status quo of how things are in our industry. What I know from my years of experience working in this industry, it's that sameness breeds sameness. Most often, childcare providers have the same routine, same expectations, and it kind of is just homogenized in that way. And so, I realize that we're also a fee-for-service organization, and that means that you have the responsibility to provide customer service to families that we serve, and that comes with an expectation and sometimes often a demand for what they want from you as an organization. I also know that that education in general is typically steeped in whiteness, and it doesn't always allow for children or employees of color to thrive or even succeed sometimes. And so being very intentional about how that was going to change. It was strange, coming into my position. I had this unspoken power that was given to me as the executive director, but I also in my time have been to continue to be faced with that, honestly, judgment, resistance, and straight up discrimination. It's been kind of surreal. I have been asked to show evidence of my education. I have been corrected for my grammar. I have been undermined by the very people who have hired me, which has been, I don't know. I just sit there and think about a decision was made to bring me on, but why now am I not good enough? And that sense of questioning that I constantly have in my mind. I have spent most of my time here at Hilltop tired, yet proud. I have been upset at times, but eager to continue to grow this, and honestly, barely holding myself together. I've hit my lowest of lows. I've questioned my self-worth, and I have debated walking away from this many times in my very short time here. If it wasn't for my people, mi familia, the people in my circle, I don't think I would have survived this long. But at the same time, with a lot of work, I am now at a new place in my career with Hilltop. I feel like it's a new beginning for us. I spent some time soul searching, and we spent some time working with consultants on very specific racial equity work. And, I think that I have a responsibility not only to myself, but to Hilltop, to our future children, our future families and faculties, faculty of color that are coming into the space to keep up the fight and not to give up. It's for that reason I feel optimistic. I really do today. I think that you found me in a really great place. If we were having this conversation a few weeks ago, a few months ago, I don't know that it would be as positive, but now I feel very grounded in my work and I'm ready to just build a greater future for Hilltop. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely echo all of that, and it's definitely why I led off with the fact that this year has been rough, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, and despite all of that, we've risen, right? We smiled, we fought through it. And unfortunately, resiliency shouldn't be rooted in tragedy, but there's also a beauty in that, right? That our people are always so resistant. And I also said, and I truly did mean that I hope to carry just what you said and that mindset into every aspect of my life. But coming into this year, coming into COVID, uh, coming into today, yo, I'm tired. I'm exhausted, y'all. Man, I'm afraid to be black, right? Because everywhere I turn, people are losing their life, their livelihoods, their spirits because of the amount of melanin in their skin. And it's not just black people, right? It's it's my Asian friends, it's my Pacific Islanders, it's my Native Hawaiians, it's indigenous, it's Latinx, it's trans lives. Any deviation of what is considered to be right American comes with a price tag, and that price is your life. And I'm not just afraid to be like in Alabama, right? I'm also afraid to be in Seattle. And people are like, oh, Seattle's so progressive. Is it though? And like on the flip side of that, I'm hungry, right? Well, physically, right? So I have my breakfast here that I haven't quite got through. But I'm hungry because if I'm not in these streets protesting, calling out oppression, calling people in, right? Working alongside people, putting my energy in spaces like this, then I'm not sure who will. I'm not sure who's going to be able to take action and accountability in living out and truly living out their anti-racist values. Not just when you're in the classroom, not just when you're in your learning environment, but I'm talking about when you're in the supermarket, right? When you're in the bodega, when you're in the transit, right? You can't just stop and start this work. So I'm hungry and I'm even more fired up to make sure that we are living out all of these values. And there goes my emails. And I really start with that because we're humans and we have wants and needs and emotions, and we need to remember that and humanize our interactions with one another. You know, our last keynote uh, of of this conference is talking about humanizing those interactions with people. And B, we need to also normalize having conversations about mental health, right? I want to really uplift that as well. So that was my first question. My second question kind of sort of set the foundation of our organization is, and I reflected on this for so long. You know, I would hear supporters go, Mike, Hilltop is so amazing. You know, Mike, Hilltop is the best. And then my job, you know, just doing marketing for the organization when I first got here was to kind of, you know, say those sentences out loud, right? And to go out and evangelize those things because it was tied into my, you know, it was tied into my job, right? And I had a long time, it was hard for me to come to work saying those things because I didn't necessarily believe it. I didn't see it. You know, we were great, sure, if you are white, if you are affluent, if if you didn't have any, if you weren't neurodivergent, right? If you were in this box essentially, and any deviation of it, I just felt like you were exiled. And trust me, I would know, right? um, and we were kind of just putting up this facade and saying our house was on such stable ground, when I felt like I would get to work and it'd be like, yo, it's kind of a dumpster fire in here, right? So my question to you, Darlene, is, yo, was I tripping? Or can you just speak to the state of the organization when you first inherited it?
You know, it's funny because as a new leader, you go through an interview process, right? And you meet with a bunch of people, and they tell you about this great organization that you're going to be joining. But no one really tells you about all the skeletons that are in the closet. Those are the things that are kind of unheard until you actually accept the job. And I was ecstatic when I got the opportunity to become the ED of Hilltop, because this is an organization that I studied when I was getting my degree. It's an organization that I showed videos of when I was teaching courses in ECE. So it was something that I am extremely proud of. At the same time, I was like, yes, they chose me. I cannot believe this untouchable organization chose me. And so I was eager, like I was ready to jump into it. I had so many ideas about what we can do, not only with the Institute, but just in growing this beautiful, amazing thing that we did for children and families. And when I walked in, it was a lot like what you're talking about, like that sense of like, whoa, okay, this is different than what I expected. And I think that the biggest thing that I realized right off the bat was our financial status. When you build something that's very elite, that's very exclusive, that's very privileged, it comes with a hefty price tag. And we weren't necessarily making what we needed to really keep that sustainable. It was something that I learned pretty quickly, that we put ourselves in a box that and we were playing a game that nobody else was involved in. So childcare providers across the country, across our city, even within our neighborhoods, had very different experiences than we did as an organization. And what made us so special and what makes us so unique also was the deficit for us. I never have worked in an organization where I could just say to the community that I serve, hey, I need money, and have people open up their checkbooks and be like, how much do you need? Like, that was a surreal reality, but yet it wasn't sustainable. When COVID hit and people were very fearful of what was going to happen, those checkbooks closed pretty quickly. And it was, we had a very stark reality that in order for us to stay open and to remain a business that people come to learn from, that we had a lot of work to do. We were not in the financial place to thrive or even survive. We had to make some very difficult decisions really early on. And when I was applying for grants and reaching out to funders and trying to get money, I heard the same story over and over and over again, which is, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't accept city subsidies, you don't have low-income families, you're not serving underserved populations. Everything was working against us. All of the things that we put in to make ourselves so elite and so special had then become a detriment to us. And it was really, really eye-opening to see that this very privileged organization now was alone. And how do you say to funders, sorry, I wasn't good enough, or sorry, you weren't good enough to be a part of my organization before, but now I want to be good enough for you to help me when I need it financially. And I realized pretty quickly that if we didn't change things, that we were gonna seriously have to close our doors. And so right away, started taking city subsidies for tuition assistance, signed up to become, to get DSHS, which is our state's subsidy program, started working on a whole bunch of things that if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be here today. And that's a reality that I think that is unspoken.
So I know this seems like a very odd way to kind of start a conversation. I'm supposed to be painting us in the best of light, but honestly, we can't, Hilltop can't talk about growth. We as individuals can't talk about growth, continue to support others to reflect. We can't call people out ourselves and tell them to be vulnerable. We aren't doing that ourselves. Right? So I know a lot of people will listen to this afterwards, and I can't wait for the amount of calls I'm gonna get from individuals, from staff, from colleagues, from funders, from board member saying, "What the hell was that?" Right? I can't wait for that. But this is important work, and if we can't do this, if we can't speak and tell our full truth, then we shouldn't be in this building, right? We shouldn't be in this space. We shouldn't host this conference. And I'm hoping as I look around and see everyone who's joining us, from college age students to professors to youth advocates, from educators to directors, I'm hoping this can inspire everyone to be better, to do better, to look at the ways that we've internalized racism, sexism, oppression, and work to really dismantle that. If not for me, right? You can be like, the hell with Mike, right? Not for me, but for the children that you serve, for the next generation. So
I think, Mike, I'm just going to jump in there, that I think that what you're saying is so true, because this isn't about us not being successful as an organization. This is about realizing that if you pigeonhole yourself too much, then you're only going to be as successful as you created yourself to be. And so I think that that's the dialogue that we're trying to start, is this pandemic, COVID in itself has brought out so much awareness in what you need to do, not only for yourself personally in your own health and all of those pieces, but also as a business. Like, how do you survive when everybody was living on fear? And there was a lot of unknowns that were happening in our world. And so I think that it was an opportunity for us to really start to reflect on ourselves as an organization, and to really start thinking about what are the things that we want to hold on to, and what are the consequences if we keep holding on to those things, and what are the things that need to change. And I think that that's what this whole conversation is about, is the change making that needs to happen. And I am still very proud to be an employee of Hilltop, and I'm still very proud of the work that we're doing every single day. And I love the history that we've come from, and all of the pieces that people seek out for us. And we continue to do those things. We just need to be more consciously aware of the impacts. And are we okay with those decisions, knowing what the impacts can be? And that's the conversation that we're having.
All right, so let's jump into it. We got 60 minutes, about 18 months. So I'll try to talk faster, but let's work backwards, right? You just mentioned what the state of our organization was when you first inherited, but where are we now, like right now?
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, things are amazing right now. I am so proud of the work that we've done. We have a new center in Fremont. For those of you that don't know, we opened a second location in the middle of a pandemic. It was very responsive for us to do that, because our building has only certain square footage, and there was a need for childcare. I mean, for those of you that don't realize, there was providers that were going fully remote, and so we took a stance and said we were going to open a second location. And so I'm excited that we have signed a lease to continue, or are signing a lease to continue to be there for well beyond this COVID timeframe. So we're becoming a Seattle preschool provider. So we're working with the city in providing care for children 3 and 4 year olds throughout the city, regardless of their ability to pay. We are just growing in our faculty. We're about 40% people of color now, which is incredible. We are speaking so many more languages in our building. Gosh, I could go on and on. It's amazing. Things are going so good, and I don't know that I could have said that a few months ago, but things are phenomenal.
So I remember sitting on the hiring committee to hire you, right? And when we were looking for you and being, and as I was the only voice of color at the table, I had to ask several times the committee, you know, do you think this organization is ready for a leader of color, right? Because leaders of color brings their own gifts, spirits, values, just ways of operating. And I said, hey, once again, like probably 4 or 5 times, I kept asking them, are you sure, right? Then, of course, they said yes, right? And, of course, they said, yeah, we're ready. And I was like, we operate differently, but whatever. Um, and I knew they didn't really understand, I guess, the breadth of what I was saying when I said we operate differently. They saw race, but what was underneath that is what I was trying to show them, that our brilliance shows up in many different ways, and that an organization that has been saturated in whiteness for so long will never would never, or it's going to be a hard road. I shouldn't say we'll never understand, but it's going to be a hard road, an uphill battle. And some people might never understand just the fact that we operate differently, right? We give each other daps, we hug each other, we show our love in a different way, right? We manage differently. And some people will never come to understand or even accept that. So when they said yes, I said, remember this conversation because I will reference it over and over again. And over the last 18 months, I brought it up countless times. And I bring it up again today because over the last 6 months, we have undergone lawsuits personally against you, Darline. We have lawsuits against the organization. I've been named as engaging in reverse racism and discrimination. Theresa's name has been dragged through the mud. And everywhere we turn, we have had employees, some current, some former, right, try and undermine everything we have done in order to get us to this point. So talk to me, right? Assuming I don't, run away and be like, I don't want to talk about this. But talk to me about just the racial reckoning Hilltop has had to undergo, the growing pains we've had to go through, especially for so long, we have always thought of ourselves as an anti-racist organization. And I'm also going to invite Theresa to speak her truth on this as well.
Oh man, yeah. This is so triggering because you mentioned it earlier, trauma comes in many different forms. And what I realized that stress and I don't know, the unknown is scary to people, and the way that they react comes out in strange ways. I think that there's a sense of expectation or power that comes in play when people feel like they can demand what they want from you. And you're talking about these things that were very targeted towards me personally, and I think that it comes with that exertion of power, right? If someone can't tell you what to do because you hold a title that's above theirs, or you are the person who's caring for their children, or whatever the circumstance may be, they will find other ways to exert their power. And I think that utilizing a system like the legal system is just a way of doing that, And so I've learned, and I will say that often, at least in my family and in my culture, we tend to be very forgiving, and we tend to sweep things under the rug, and we take a lot of accountability for other people's actions. And so I've learned that when those things have happened, not to take it personal, even though it's very personal and it's very disheartening. And just to realize that it's people's way of expressing themselves. It's a lot like working with children. You find very unusual ways to express your feelings. And but what I do know that the organization has to pay more attention to is that there has been some blatant racism that has happened within our organization, um, and that exertion of power comes with privilege, and it's just unfortunate that that's how it's played out. But at the end of the day, when you stay true to yourself and you stay true to what your values are, and you know that you're doing things for the right reason, then no one can break you down, no matter how much they try to do it. And I just, that's what I think of is the growing pains that we have been feeling as an organization comes out of fear. And when people are fearful, we have at least I feel like we have a responsibility to help them work through that fear and remain true to ourselves. And that's all I've been doing this whole time, as much as it sucks. It really has been all that I can do to stay sane, honestly. And, you know, I guess taking care of my people too. I think about that. And I think about Theresa a lot. She's someone who I admire and um, have learned so much from. And to see that by default and by um, just sheer association, she has experienced more than she ever should experience as a new leader of this organization. And it's just it's unfortunate, but um, she's an amazing, brilliant woman who's strong and fierce and can overcome anything. So I'll let her speak for herself on that.
Wow. Um, I echo a lot of what you say. Thank you so much. Sometimes I wonder what my job is at times. You know, I chose to work with children because I was that marginalized child and was always taken my life work as empowering people, and I never thought that I would be empowering adults. It was always about the children. So that spoke to my heart. I thank you. I think my own experience and all that is very, very reflective of what our leader went through. And I say leader because she led us through some really dark waters. And I know that there was times where she wanted to give up, and we had to just keep pushing her. You got this, you got this. And it came with a lot of sharing life experiences. I think, you know, we keep talking about this circle that we have to create, and my circle's now bigger. I do want to say that when I first got here, my circle was very small because I had a lot of mistrust. I had people questioning my own experience within coming in as a new leader because I was coming from a world that was different than theirs. But I kind of knew what I was gonna walk into because we had talked about the strategic plan before I had the opportunity to join an amazing group of people. And I think that there was, in all of this, that the mistrust is now turning into trust. I see that happening slowly, but it's happening. There's this beautiful thing that has been happening around here. You know, I was questioning my own sanity at first, going, "Okay, you're hearing things wrong. No, that wasn't right." I think you hit the nail on the head when you were saying, you know, like you just start internalizing what's happening without thinking about it, and then going, "Oh no, that can't be right. No, I'm going to leave it alone for a second because I shouldn't question that because I'm new." Especially for me, I was like, when this all started, I was new, and I'm like, I'm not going to question somebody else's knowledge because that's disrespectful. In the way that I was raised, you don't question other people. You let them teach their life to you. And so in a lot of this, I've learned a lot about myself and my resilience. I mean, I know I was a resilient person and raised by very strong people and have a circle of friends, but that one-on-one time with yourself after you leave and you're like, was today my breaking point? No, it wasn't. I'm going back tomorrow because I'm going to make it. I'm going to show these people this amazing person I am, which I don't do very often say about myself, but I'm starting to see that people are starting to open up with that. Yeah. Thank you for both your kind words.
It's hard. It's hard. For everyone, it doesn't manifest in a lawsuit for some people. Sometimes it's microaggressions. Sometimes it's telling people that you don't belong. And it doesn't have to be verbally telling people, right? There's also a nonverbal element to our work. Maybe it's enacting laws and policies and procedures that are well intended, but never consider the unique needs and pressures that are experienced by families of color, by staff of color in your environments. And before you look at others, understand how you have committed it yourself. Understand how you may have been complicit. Self-righteousness is what we usually go to when we hear racism or oppression, right? Oh, it's not me, it's those people over there, right? But as reflective practitioners, turn that lens into ourselves. And unfortunately, like too many of us have to be strong and resilient because we have faced trauma. That's on a personal level. But what many people also forget is how trauma can also exist in organizations as well, right? We joke about it now, but honestly, it seems like our place floods each and every single year. And this year, when it flooded on top of COVID, it seemed like it was the straw that broke everyone's back. So, where do you find strength as a leader of the organization to be supportive of others while also, experiencing yourself this kind of increased level of tension, stress, and responsibility?
Yeah, the flood. It's funny that you bring that up because I think that when something happens unexpected, you also get unexpected results. And I think that I have a responsibility as a leader to um, really show. I keep going to the sense of like teaching children, right? It's by showing them through hands-on experiences. And the day of the flood, I, just like you, rolled up my sleeves, pulled up my pant legs, and jumped into the water and said, all right, we're going to clean up this mess, And that could have been an opportunity to be like, I'm the executive director here. I have bigger things to do. I'm just going to jump on a phone. I'm going to put myself in an office. I'm not going to get involved in what's happening in the actual mess. Or I could stand up and say, I got you because you got me. And that, I think, is the responsibility that I hold is if I show my stress, then everybody's going to be stressed. If I stay calm and collective and just start doing the work, then everybody else is going to do this. They're going to follow suit, right? They're going to do the same thing. It's leading by example, essentially. And I think that's what happened that day. I say it was the best day of my life. It was also the worst day of my life when I come to Hilltop, because two very different experiences happened in that moment in time. There was this beautiful thing of all of our team members wading in water and having this line where we're passing buckets and dumping water out of. And for those of you that don't know, we had like water in our building and just this line of faculty that are just dumping out water and trying to get the building cleared out. And that was teamwork at its finest, where you can't plan that out. At the same time, it was a moment of just, again, this awareness of bias and racism that played out in that day, where there was, at the time, there was 45 of us in this building, adults trying to not only clear out water but also get children to their parents that were lining up at the door to pick them up. And to hear that, and also in the middle of a pandemic, that out of all the faculty that were working that day, so getting the water out, that one of our educators of color was called out for not wearing a face mask when they were drenched in sweat and trying to clear their face off because they were, lugging 5-gallon jugs of water out the door. Yet right next to them was their white colleague who was doing the same exact thing but wasn't called out. Like those moments, it's just so bizarre to me to see that it was such a beautiful moment, but yet there's these little prickly moments of just hate that came in with it, you know. And I could have gone up to that employee like I was demanded to and be like, put on your face mask and tear them down. Or I could stand behind them and say, I got you, and maybe even pull my face mask off for a second to wipe my brow off, to just say, we're doing the best that we can in this very stressful moment, and not feed into that hate that was happening. And so I think about so many things that happened that day, and many days since then, of where I could have stepped back and gone into my shell and go into a place that I usually go to, which is to flee rather than fight. And I chose not to. And I think that for you, Mike, and for Theresa, and for the many other people that are in our organization who have wanted to run away, it has been that we got this together, and we're gonna keep holding each other up rather than tearing each other down. And I think that that's probably the best accountability and responsibility that I can take.
It reminds me. I thought of two things. It reminds me of just how everyone always thinks racism is this physical, violent act towards you, and never consider how just the small little ways in which you can attack someone that are so insidious, right? That looks like and feels like nothing. But when you really examine it and look at the context of things, you go, huh, actually, that was a direct and blatant attack on someone. And then the other thing I thought about is how here we needed new toilets, right? Toilet lids. And we were, instead of asking facilities, instead of pulling educators out of their classroom, we got on our knees, right, on that very pee infested floor. And, right, we put our hair up and we decided to get the wrench and change out the toilet seats ourselves, because that's just what leaders do, right? It's not looking for others. And I don't know, and you said it, um, I don't know how many other leaders would actually do that, right? Where we got grants to write, we got to be in the classroom, we got to do all so many competing things, and we would tie up our hair, lay down on the ground, and get dirty.
Literally.
Yeah. So at this time, I want to shoot it over to Theresa and see, was there any questions or comments?
No, just a couple of shout outs to thank you guys for your honesty. And yeah, just from the Channel Islands, thank you for your courage and resilience and truth telling. Thank you. That was Margie. Stay true to yourself. Yep, no questions though.
Perfect. Well, if you have questions, feel free to private message our moderator so she can ask them. Or if you're feeling brave and confident, go ahead and throw it right into the chat. So yeah, when they pop up, just let us know. So yeah, let's just keep going. So I guess, just thinking about that and just how organizational trauma is literally nothing new for us. But I think the blatant classism exhibited, as you mentioned, with some of our families was new, right? It was new for a lot of our educators and some of our staff. So when we think of classism, we often think of it in terms of just price, right? Childcare is expensive. And that's what we think of. But what we experience, which can also double as, maybe white privilege, because oppression doesn't live in a vacuum. I feel like this is the less talked about part of classism. So historically, we would bend over backwards for our caregivers, for our families, and make decisions that were financially irresponsible and even morally kind of icky. Can you describe that decision that you made and the blowback that followed, Darline?
Oh my gosh. I think I experienced my first awareness of classism again, I reference COVID a lot, maybe because it's been a majority of my time here at Hilltop, but it's also been just a moment of um, newness for everybody, right? Nobody had experienced what COVID brought to our world, and so I think we all kind of were grappling at what our new reality was or is when the pandemic hit. And I remember, you and I actually sitting in a conversation about how are we going to stay open or are we going to close? When there were a lot of people on our team that were like, historically, Hilltop closes. We get paid to be home. Families are in a contract, so they'll keep paying even if they're not in the building. And so we're all just going to stay closed until everything opens back up again. And you and I and another colleague of ours being like, hold on, we can't have parents pay for a service that they're not getting. And we really need to be available for families and children who need care. And we were just thinking about different ways that we can do that and what was that going to look like. And we put out first to our currently enrolled families, hey, we are going to be open for care. We are trying to serve essential workers. Do you want to come to school? Like, do you want to keep attending? And we only had 10 children in our building in the month of April, 10, when normally we have 120. And so, we were like, how are we going to afford to keep our doors open if we have 10 children in the building? And so we started thinking about, like, you know what? Let's start a new partnership. Let's reach out to a community that needs to be served. We have the space, we have the capacity. Let's do this. And so we started to talk in partnership with a Native American health provider here in the city and saying, why don't we partner up and we will be your provider for your employees, and we will reach out to other businesses like grocery stores and industry, the services that were still open and that we were all needing, but yet families were needing that care. And I was shocked that when we put out communication to our currently enrolled families that we were going to start welcoming outside Hilltop family members or communities to come into our building, that the responses that we got. People saying, if you welcome those people into the building, we're going to pull our kids out. We don't want those kids to be here. We don't want families from that neighborhood. Like, it was bizarre. Like, I'm like, children are children. It doesn't matter what neighborhood they come from. We're here to provide an opportunity for them. And oh my gosh, the resistance that we got from that just was a little it was a little disheartening to say the least. And I regret my decision every single day. I regret my decision that we didn't do that. We didn't take anybody. We walked away from that potential partnership. And I know now that it was based from fear on my part because we were not financially stable at the time. And I was so worried that if all of our current Hilltops families left, then what would we be left with? And what would that look like? And could I, in the middle of a pandemic, raise enough revenue when we were being turned down for grant after grant? Like, I just didn't know what to do. And so I gave in. I gave into that classism. And I regret it. And I wish I had the courage then that I have now to stand my ground and say, no, we're going to do what's right for children above anything else. And we're going to do what's right for our community and our neighborhood and our city, no matter what, and did it anyways. And but it is what it is. But it did open my eyes pretty quickly that there was a ranking system in our community, and anyone who lived outside of that was not welcomed. And that has changed a lot. We now have families who come from very diverse backgrounds, and I mean that in social economic status more than anything else. But it was for sure an aha moment of like, wow, this really does exist, and it really does exist in my own building. And that in itself was pretty mind-blowing.
And I'm going to throw it to Theresa, actually, because I think we have a question. Maybe? Yes.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. I'm gonna have to back up a little tiny bit. Sorry, first time doing this. Okay, I have a question from somebody asking if you're willing to write a learning story about the staff parents and the flood. What a powerful framework that you could use to share this experience. It would be visible for others. Would that be something that you guys would be interested in doing?
You know, it's funny that you asked that question because I am writing learning stories about my experience at Hilltop, and I do want to find a way to for us to learn from this experience because I know that there's other providers out there, there's other educators out there that have lived the same experience or similar experiences, and I think that that's our responsibility as advocates and educators is um, to put our truth out there for other people to get information from and to learn from that. So yeah, that's definitely in the works.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
This flood, right? This flood happened, and throughout all of this kind of chaos, we still have a child care center to run. I want to switch our attention to the children for a moment and invite Teresa back into the conversation here. What are some of the practices in place or conversations you've heard from educators that are bringing awareness, building resiliency, and helping them to be mindful of their lived experiences? So, do you have any stories or anecdotes that of them being mindful of the moment we are in with children?
Yeah, Teresa, do you want to go first?
Sure. um, well, I just what comes to mind is I know that I feel like when we had that real talk after everything kind of boiled and then kind of calmed down a little bit, we had the 3-day equity work that we did, and I feel like I before that was really hard, but I feel like I just want to focus on that because it's been such a beautiful thing since then. I I what resonates with me after that is a lot of people, and this kind of a negative but a positive, people coming and apologizing to me because we really were truthful. I mean, I'm constantly thanking Darlene for being so vulnerable in that she spoke a lot of her truth, and it's really hard for us as BIPOC to speak our truth because we don't want people to think we're weak. Because it's not a weakness; it's a this is what I'm feeling, and this is my truth, and you had to share a lot of things that a lot of your traumas, which is a really hard thing to do. And a lot of people kept coming to me as well. We spoke in small groups and apologizing to me. And although it was a beautiful thing, I got to the third or fourth one where it was kind of uncomfortable. And then finally, I was like, "What are you apologizing for?" Um, and they're like, "It was just so much. I don't know if I've offended you or I've done something that hurt you." And I'm like, "No, that's not what this is about." Um, if you're apologizing to me, it's because something you've done you feel was not okay. Let me know what it is. Just like the children, we refer back to the work of the children, right? Like, you don't just say sorry to say sorry. And I feel like that was a really big point that a point in the community that we have had here, and we talked a lot about our circle of people. And like I said, my circle got a little bit bigger because in that training we became real with each other. um, it's been a little bit easier to call out microaggressions without people feeling that I'm trying to hurt them, but letting them know that, hey, that was kind of, not even just for me. I do it to myself too. I'm like, oh man, what did I just say? That was horrible. Right. And being able to see people actually doing that now without feeling like they're going to be judged. That's the one thing that I say in my work with trying to heal from the ugliness of racism. It's loving each other through it, right? Because that's what the opposite of hate is love, right? And just being aware, I think, of teachers now feeling like it's a safe place. In our team meetings, people are like, oh wait, that's not how I meant that. I meant it like this. And it's like, okay, thank you for pointing that out. And I think that's just those little things that I'm seeing now that are happening, that before it was, I don't understand why you're upset with what I just said. Why, if I'm asking you, there were things that were happening in my role as program director, walking around, like, why are you washing the dishes? You're supposed to be managing the program. I'm like, that's part of managing a program. Just those little things like that before I didn't say anything, I'd just be like, oh my gosh, am I doing something wrong? And starting to question my own ability. like, oh no, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm doing things awkwardly. But now those are those little things like that kind of stand out now.
And Mike, if you want, I could answer this. I know that I'm looking at the time, and I know you have other stuff. Or we can leave it at that and move on to something else.
You got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say to add to that, and when you talk about switching our attention to the children, the piece that I just want to say out loud is that I think that there has been this sense of, while we only serve a majority of white children, so our practices are fine. And I know that I've taken on the responsibility to constantly be saying, that's not the point. It doesn't matter that you don't have a Black child in your care, that all of a sudden you change your teaching practices. It's our responsibility to teach about social justice in all aspects of what that means, because the child that you're working with today, they will encounter someone who doesn't look like them sometime in their life. And so we have a responsibility of teaching them how to have compassion and empathy for their fellow humans in life. And I do a lot of work in our space right now, talking to our educators about what the outcome could be if that child didn't have access and the privileges that they do based on the family that they happen to be being raised in. And so I know that there's always this, when we serve kids that look like, or when we serve kids that have this experience, or it doesn't matter whether that child's in your building now or will be in your building someday, teach those practices to all children. And I just wanted to put that message out there.
Thank you. And you also took about 45 seconds.
I know. I can't help it.
We'll yell at you later for that.
Okay.
So the theme of this conference is responsiveness in the times of injustices. And it's a cute saying, right? But drawing upon your history, your culture, your ways of being, what does that mean for you two, Theresa and Darline?
I think that honestly, I mean, I look at the border right now, and I look at how many undocumented children. Watching the video of kids being dropped on the other side of the wall to find lives in the United States. Those are real things. And I think of that about responsiveness. You've mentioned before about just because we're in Seattle doesn't mean that we're ahead of any other place out there when it comes to being just more aware. And every day I think about my family who's in Mexico still. I think about, is that someone that I'm not even aware of that I could be helping? It's very personal. It's extremely personal that we have a lot of work to do for not only our community, but for childcare in general, for the social services industry, for advocacy, for there's just so many things that we have to take on. It's well beyond what's happening in our four walls. We got to think bigger than just Queen Anne Hilltop. We got to think way bigger than that, and how we're helping children everywhere.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And it's one of the things that I tell people is I have all this other stuff when I turn the TV on that I have to absorb when I'm walking out the door and still come out with a smile so that I can keep children, engaged in amazing experiences. But it's a really hard thing to turn off. I don't say turn off those feelings, but try to put them to the side so you can make a better experience for the children when you're at work. But it's really hard. For myself, for me as an Indigenous woman, the missing and murdered women and children was kind of just before pandemic. I don't know if anybody's aware of this. Before the pandemic, it started becoming nationally known, and lots of people were talking about it. And then the pandemic hit, and then it stopped. And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, we were almost a part of mainline news. And it's a sad thing to say, but that's my reality. So when I think about things and I'm hearing things, I'm like, hey, we still have our our pains and hurt over here. Whose is more important? And so every day when you're trying to juggle all those emotions, it's really hard. That's why I again depend on your circle to sit and look at, and just you don't even have to have a conversation. Just sit in a room and be like, exhale together, inhale together.
I look at the attack against our LGBTQIA plus community, or more specifically the trans community.
Hmm.
And like the genital check that's being adopted in Florida is wild, right? It's mind blowing. And being responsive to them means speaking up and talking about it, especially when my family, growing up in an Afro Caribbean community, um, being gay, lesbian, it's frowned upon, right? And when I'm at the kitchen table with them and they are cracking jokes or anything like that, instead of walking away, instead of throwing my hands up, right, it's staying at the table and working to help them understand how hurtful that is for for me, knowing I have children in my classroom who identify as a boy, but they like to wear dresses, right? And how if you love children, it doesn't matter what shape, color, size, or how they identify, you have to love them for who they are. You have to uplift them. So since the start of COVID, I mean, we have seen the brutality like no other, right? We've seen George Floyd. We've seen what's happening at the border. We've seen what happened in Atlanta, right? In Austin, Texas this weekend. But those are the ones that are only garnering national attention. And white supremacy aims to tear and pit voices of color against each other, mentally, physically, emotionally. So to you, I'm gonna just focus on you, Theresa. How are you creating solidarity across movements in your work that you're doing at Hilltop and in the world?
Um, I I would love to be able to do more, but this pandemic makes it very hard work, right? I think just making sure that everybody is hearing real truths when they're creating curriculum. We spend an about 45 minutes a week with each team during the week to talk about what's going on in the classroom and what conferences are happening. But there's been a lot of talk of, especially because it's coming up to the year of the George Floyd, and I just want to raise my hands for him for a moment. It's hard to speak about that. Um, but people, educators in the building that are wanting to do things for that, just making sure that they're doing it for learning for the children and not just something to do, right? And one of our educators is actually implementing the Changemaker curriculum. I believe it was on a, yeah. So we've been talking a lot about that. I know that another thing that we've been doing is really building our library here, and a lot of amazing books that we brought in so that it's not just focused on what's happening in the moment, because there's a lot of things that we need to bring in, like Darlene said, not just because the children that we're here are we doing you know curriculum for the children that are here, but actually introducing to the world. I feel like the best thing that you can do to children is give them experiences that they're more resilient than we are, right? Like they take in more. So we've been doing a lot of new books and to bring in different subjects so that children can talk about it, but having real conversations. And like I said, people have been opening up to asking questions like, hey, is this something that would be okay? And holding each other accountable.
Perfect. So sticking with that kind of same stream of consciousness, being the theme, just being responsive in a time of grave injustice. It's kind of wild to think about. Back in August, we found this building that I'm currently in our Fremont. We leased it. We bought furniture. We painted it, and we flipped it. We flipped this. It was a gym, so we flipped a former gym in a childcare center in about like 3 weeks. So if you want radical change, you need action. You need accountability. And I know storytelling really can't substitute, for changes in the strategy and the programs and budgets, personnel management, measurement. Um, but can you tell me what goes into that thinking for you to be able to pull the trigger and support the community in ways that was never done before at Hilltop, Darling?
I think I definitely am a risk taker. And I think that it comes with a lot of, well, you said it, it's strategy, right? It was looking at what the demand was and the need, and then really trying to see if we can make that work. Um, you know, it's actually kind of ironic that we needed a space for our school age children, yet that wasn't the biggest population that we were serving at the time. We were mainly serving children, 2 to 5, and so I think that it comes with a sense of like confidence too. I don't know how to explain it. We surveyed our families and asked what the need was, and we had a huge demand for care because there wasn't any providers open doing that remote learning that was desperately needed. And so, in doing that, working with our broker to just find a space, and we looked in our complex here. We looked everywhere. We talked to other people that are in the same building as us. We were just trying to find a solution, and um, I think that coming together with the lease that we're in, the building that you're in right now, was pure luck. At the same time, just kind of keeping a pulse on the ground. It's a dream of mine for us to have a mega center for Hilltop, where we have our institute and all of the things that we do all in the same building. And so I always look at real estate in Seattle and other places. And so, having that pulse on the ground, found the gym that we turned into the space that you're in now. And then it was just crunching the numbers. Could we make it work? What would it take? What would it look like? And it was a financial risk for sure. But no matter what happened at Fremont, no matter how it all played out, we were able to serve the number of children that we are serving there. And to me, that's a win, because those kiddos are thriving, and they're not falling to that learning loss that's happening this year for a lot of children in our community. I won't go into the blowback that I got from opening Fremont. All I will say is that it takes grit and it takes risk, and I'm willing to do that if it means that we're going to be providing an opportunity for children who may not have it anywhere else.
So this next question is more of a selfish one on my end, but because I never asked you, what were you thinking back in March 2020 when we just got word that the world is just about to shut down? Like, what went through your mind?
Well, there was a lot of things that were going through my mind. One was like, holy crap, how am I going to tell all these people that they're not going to have a job in 2 weeks? That was honestly what was going through my mind. And then it was, no. We're going to figure this out. And it became that very instinctive survival mode. And, I guess this is a great thing about being poor. Growing up, is that you could pretty much make anything work on nothing. And, I also believe that you can provide really great care in a cardboard box. It's about the love that you give to children. And so in March, it was just like, all right, what is it that we need to do to get through this? And honestly, Mike, you and I were teachers in March. We were in the classroom, and it was like, if nobody else is willing to come in, we're going to come in. We will be the ones who are providing the care. And it was sort of that don't give up attitude that I think that you just kind of grow in resiliency, and when you grow up wondering where your next meal is going to come from, finding a way to keep our building open is a luxury. And so I'm grateful. I guess I'm grateful for the upbringing that I've had, because it has built me to this place where I can make almost anything happen. And I think that that's what we did here.
You know, when I left the classroom 4 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm never going back in there. And here we are.
Here we are.
You know, one of the kids earlier today, one of the children, they were like, "Go give me my water bottle," and I was like, "Oh, okay. I got to remember how to actually interact with children." So it's been fun. So what has been the biggest lesson you both have learned from COVID? Because 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we would have just closed down, paid everyone until the money ran dry, and then hoped to be bailed out by donations.
Well, I learned pretty quickly that even the wealthiest of wealthy are not going to give up their money when there's a global pandemic and they're uncertain about what the future holds. I mean, I think that we saw it all around, right? We saw it. How long did it take for our government to give up out money? And as child care providers, we're still fighting to get money. So that was a pretty quick lesson that came about, you know, and I also learned pretty quickly that um, you have to you have to you have to work harder to prove yourself when there's a lot of doubt in people's minds. And you know, I could have very easily said to everyone in our community, "You signed a contract. You're in a binding contract through the end of August. So, regardless of what happens, I'm requiring you to pay." That's not who I am personally. Like I couldn't do that, nor could I'm just not someone who goes to that sort of legal place of things, which is why those accusations and lawsuits were so hard for me to accept, because that's just not in my nature to do that. But I realized that COVID is, and what I've had to say many, 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 many times to all of the naysayers out there is, you're no more of an expert of COVID than I am. This is something that we're all experiencing together. So we're going to make mistakes together. And that has been, I don't know why there's this perception that I should be a content expert in something that, you know, again, we've never experienced. I could talk to you about child development. I could talk to you about some of our common illnesses like chickenpox or whatever, but COVID, it's so new, right? And I also just realized that um, in order for us to be here and to be as successful as we have been, it also has to be I have to be unapologetic sometimes. And you know, I have been called the angry woman. I have been said that I have a transactional attitude. There's been lots of, you know, I don't know what you want to say, compliments that have been given to me about my personality over the last 2 years, almost 2 years. But at the end of the day, I had a responsibility, and that was trying to wade through something that none of us could have foreseen, and that's something that I'm proud of to this day. That we are doing amazing things in this organization, and we'll continue to do amazing things for the next 50 years. But sometimes you just got to stand true to what you believe in.
A lot of that, yes. I think the biggest thing for me was like having to. I kept hearing the word survival mode, and to me, in my mind, I don't know if it was just the way that I was raised and the community I was raised in. Survival mode to me means we all get together. What are we going to do to survive? But it was not. I had to get people to change that. Survival mode doesn't mean you stay in your own head and don't let anybody else help you. That just means I'm surviving on my own. I couldn't gain that concept when people were saying, I'm in survival mode. I'm like, I am too. What are we going to do for each other? And it was a totally different understanding and concept. So I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned, is that I had to, for me, I say change minds. I had to change people's minds and concept of what survival mode meant, because some people were in a place that was going to break them down and not have them grow to do better. And I think that also that in everything that did happen, we did find a way to start to learn to trust each other. But like I said, it took a lot of the BIPOC people in the building to share their truth for people to understand what that was. And I think that that was the biggest thing that I got, was just like people just understanding what survival mode meant.
So I'm looking at the time, and I do want to save about 10 minutes just for questions and answers and just hearing other people's thoughts. So start thinking, if you're listening, of things that you want to just ask us. So in the next 4 minutes, I have two questions left. Darlene, for this next question, I want you to help speculate with me. So pretend like it's 2040. The world comes to a standstill again, unfortunately, and you've passed the baton to me, of course, right? Or anyone on this call, right? To someone else, to one of our many college age students who are on this call today, right? So they are now the leader of an organization, of a child care center. What do you want them to consider, to think through, and to reflect on?
Hmm. I'm actually very fortunate that I have the privilege of working with college students all the time. I teach in early childhood education courses, and so one of the things that I constantly talk about with students and to faculty here is like, what is your philosophy? Like, what is your vision? What is your values as an educator? And really start to create that in your mind of who you want to be and what that organization that you lead is going to be about. And I would say to you, and I hope I say this enough to you, Mike, is take the risk, take the chance, and I mean, I often will just say, go do this. Learning Stories conference has been your vision and your work, and very little have I had an influence on that, in the sense like it's been what you wanted. And I think that when things get really, really tough, and if there was another time when the world came to a standstill, stay true to who you really want to be. And again, I keep talking about the fact that if you are doing it for the right reasons, you can make anything work. You really can. You'll get the supporters that you need standing behind you, because your hard work up to that point will have contributed to your reputation. It will contribute to the stakeholders that are invested in you, and it will all work itself out. It really will. I am extremely grateful that I feel like I have a responsibility to help grow the next generation of educators and leaders that are going to be doing this work well beyond my time. And so, if I could instill anything in them, it is that: write your own path and just fight to keep it going.
And I would also say that I couldn't do this without our wonderful partners and sponsors. North Seattle College, WIAC, SALSA, Birchie School, City of Seattle Department of Education Early Learning, Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood, and Educa. 7. Yes, those are 7. So I just wanted to shout out and thank you all for allowing me to bring this to fruition,
Yeah, flourishing, yeah.
something like that. Anyways, so I want to end this before we move to Q&A with one last question. And the most tragic thing about this story, about this conversation, is that most BIPOCs don't get to this question that I'm really about to ask right here. And I think this also holds true in society as adults, right? In our work with young children, and that's the celebration part. So most leaders of color, we don't last as long in this field in order to celebrate our success. And we are in the midst of our 50th year of operation. So, Darline, Theresa, in a year where people and systems have done everything in their power to get rid of you, to tear down your spirits, why do you belong here?
Teresa, you go first.
Okay. Well, I had to question myself often every day. Like I said, I would go home and question, and there was just something inside me that said, I'm needed. People need to see that there can be healing. I believe that I too had a very, very traumatic childhood growing up as an Indigenous person in Montana, of always being told that I was less than or wasn't going to amount to much. And um, in that, even though it was very, like I said, I share my story not to look for any kind of like, oh, sadness or anything, but I believe that built me up for this. I feel like, oh, this was preparing me for this moment. And I think that that's one of the things that I know I belong here. I walk through the center, and each child and everything that's happening, in bubbles that I can't be in, and just walking through the hallway, having children like want to just say hi to me as I'm walking by, lets me know that I belong here, right? That's the first and foremost. I love all the educators in the building, but those children and that bond that they have with me. I also I'm just I think that just I bring a lot of hope and light. I hope I bring a lot of hope and light, I should say. I feel like I do. I try to bring comedy. I laugh through a lot of my heartaches, and I try to bring laughter too. And I've tried to bring laughter to a lot of situations, just to kind of change the energy. I actually think you guys joked about it. Teresa's back. She's back with her punchline. So yeah, I think that's why I know I belong here. People are now embracing me because they've allowed me to be my authentic self, and I've given that to them now.
And I think that I belong. I agree with what Theresa was saying, and I also think that I belong here for the kiddos that are in our building who wouldn't have had this opportunity before. I really honestly believe that Hilltop is a magical place. The work that has been built by many educators who have come to this door over the past 50 years, um, for the people who have put in their blood, sweat, and tears to create a learning environment that centralizes children and provides them with an opportunity to have provocations, and who get the opportunity to really be centralized in having adult educators observe them to determine what is next, what is their next opportunity. I think that that is something that all children deserve. And I think that a lot of children from marginalized communities and children who have experienced trauma or in transitional situations, whether it's housing or in foster care or whatever the circumstance may be, can really thrive in an environment like what Hilltop provides. And so I feel like I'm here in order to bring awareness that in order for us to continue to have this model available to all children and families throughout whatever community that they're in, whatever location that they're in, it takes an effort that um, it requires more than just putting yourself so far into this box that nobody else can touch you. I'm here to say, and I belong here to say that Hilltop has a lot to offer when people come to learn from us, but we also have a lot to learn from lots of other people who are out there. And we can tell our stories and we can share these moments in time, but we're not perfect. And we have to be transparent in everything that we do. And so that's my responsibility, and that's why I'm here.
Love it. So I'm going to turn it over to Theresa. Do we have any questions that came in?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment of someone who was sharing something, and she's given me permission to share it with you all. Um, Annie White is from CSU, the Channel Islands. Am I saying that right? Okay. Yeah. She said that their president, their first person of color president, sent out a remark this morning that was very transparent, and I was going to pull up a little bit so I can read it. I thought it'd be kind of interesting. While these tragedies are so debilitating for us, you can never allow it to steal our hope. Once we become totally cynical about our efforts, all hope is gone. Without hope, there are some days I would not be able to get out of bed. We cry. We are depressed. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. We curse, and then we get up and we put the armor of hope and press on. As warriors, we do not have a choice in the matter. Giving up is not an option. We are fighters for the long game, and I hope that you will remain hopeful as well. That was very powerful to share that. Thank you, Annie.
So thoughts, right? You got us for the next 5 minutes. Who has a question, thought, comment? Um, feel free to type into the chat or just unmute yourself. We are here for you. And then I can always call on people. So trust me, I love doing that.
There is a request here from Margie, who brought learning stories to the USA. So, Margie, would you be wanting to speak?
Mark, there you go.
Took me a minute to get unmuted. Maybe that was appropriate. I put in the chat room that when I work with, when I have in the past worked with educators around sort of uncovering and finding the learning story you think is really important to tell, we try to get to the essence of the experience. And so I think about this learning story that you've told us today. And what I ask educators is, if you were to cull out the essence and give this learning story a title, what would that be? What's the essence of this story we've heard from Hilltop today? And what title might you give it? It might be fun to have people pop that in the chat room.
I think what I hope people will take away from this conversation is that we all go through our personal and organizational struggles, and that you're not alone, and that so much of what we've been taught is to smile, to put on this brave face, to put on this coat of armor when our souls inside are dying. And if we are going to educate our youth, if we are going to be in relationship with one another, if we are going to have to change the trajectory of a child's life, of our lives, we need to be able to sit in front of each other and have these vulnerable conversations. We need to be able to look each other in the eye and say, I am not okay. My people are dying in the streets. There are people out to get me, right? And if we can be able to do that, then we can heal. And I want so desperately to heal, not just for myself, but for everyone on this call as well. Because we're all going through something. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And as for the title of it, putting me on the spot right there, maybe that's it. You're not alone. Not just, Kim said, not just voices of color, but agents of change. Right? Because I just don't want to be, I just don't want to serve more families of color, right? I don't want to do that numerical diversity. I want to support a child who might look like me, right? I always think, what would 5-year-old Mike need? And what 5-year-old Mike need is someone who validates him, who makes sure he's visible. And what 5-year-old Mike wants is what, I'm about to turn 30, is what 29-year-old Mike wants. And that's just to be seen and to be valued and to be appreciated. Darline?
You know, the thing that I keep thinking about is mental health and that feeling of isolation. It's something that I think about as the leader of this organization, is how isolated it's been, how isolating it has been to be in this role and to remain that forward facing happy person that everybody expects to see, and even you know, amongst the few Hilltop folks that are on this call today, not really knowing the darkness that happens behind the scenes, and I am in a really great place right now. So I'll say that out loud. I'm in a really great place right now. But just a few months ago, being at the lowest of my lows, where I was contemplating taking my own life because of the amount of hurt that I was experiencing in what I have such a love for, and that's education. I mean, has been truly everything that I have worked my whole life to be, is an educator for young children. And so I think that the story that I keep wanting to share with folks, and the reason why I even agreed to doing this today, was that I know that there are other people out there, regardless of how you identify, regardless of whatever, right? Those biases are out there. This work can be a lot of times is very not recognized and not valued, and we're looked at as educators as a service for families, and not necessarily as a partner in this work. And I think it's important to just be very, uh, very honest and vulnerable in those moments. And like Theresa shared earlier, this is probably the first time in my life that I have done a lot of healing through vulnerability and sharing a lot about my my own life experiences, my own life trauma. I'm typically a very reserved person in that way, and I don't share a lot of who I am with people. But I learned through my experience here at Hilltop that I have to be comfortable in my own skin, and I have to build up the confidence to not let people continue to tear me down. Because if that was the case, then what's the point? And I think that that's where I got to in my own experience, is that I'm worthy of my successes, and I don't need anyone. I don't need anyone to validate that for me. I've done this enough for myself that whether or not you like me is um, it doesn't matter. It's about the kids that are behind this wall right here that I hear laughing through the vent that's above me, that I'm here for them. I'm not here for the adults and to make them happy. I'm here to make sure that there's not another little Darline in the world who is suffering in silence and no one notices. And that's the part that I want to make sure that we stand true to here in this organization and well beyond our four walls, is that there are many, many, many children out there who are struggling in silence and don't have anyone standing up for them. And that's what I could just go on and on about that. It's what we're here for, and it's what we'll continue to be here for.
All right. So at that point, if there's is there any other additional questions or thoughts that anyone would like to unmute themselves? I know we are at 12:35, and I want to be respectful for people's time.
Thank you very much. It was really, really helpful. My comment was that it really reaffirms the struggles that a lot of folks are experiencing, and thinking that I think Mike said that it's personalized to us, but I think that it's a part of system change. And so it was really nice to hear and to find some strength in moving forward.
Thanks, Michelle.
I can hear the kids in the vent. All right. So on that note, we are at the beginning of a journey today, and over the next, 29 workshops over 7 days. I will not be sleeping much, I guess. And I hope our vulnerability, the vulnerability we saw in the chat, that, the personal stories that were shared, I hope those will support you as you attend all of these sessions. And then as you go off into your work day or just in your life, and that you carry this growth mindset with you. And, you're going to hear things, that you might not like in all our workshops. You might hear things that you won't agree with. And I encourage you all to work to unpack that, right? We're not going to change your thoughts today, and that's okay. That's the beauty of a democracy. But we are here to push you. We are here to give you a different perspective or a different framework to work with, to learn with, to live in. So tell a friend. They can still register at any point between now and June 25th and receive all of these recordings. If you already have a friend that registered, tell them to look in their spam or their junk folder, right? Because some of these emails end up there. And last but not least, if you haven't filled out our sign-in sheet, if you want stars or merit hours, that's if you are located in the state of Washington, or if you want/need a certificate of participation, then please fill out that form. No exceptions. So we are back at it at 1:30 to 2 p.m. Yes, 1:30 Pacific time. So do the conversion in your head, and we will see you for our next workshop. Thank you, and take care, everyone.